Hey guys, what's up? It's Eli Knight with Knight Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm doing another one of my videos where I do like this technique from everywhere, and that's a little bit of hyperbole. I don't mean this is going to be every single opportunity that you can get it, but this is going to be from pretty much all over the place. It's going to hit a lot of different positions, standing and ground. This one's going to be about guillotines, and the guillotine choke is one of the most versatile, one of the most ever-present chokes. So anyway, let's get started with it. I'm going to show a couple of my favorite entries to it from the beginning, from standing. Now, this can happen a lot of different ways. It can happen in a self-defense context from the guy. He comes and tries to tackle me somehow, and I like block him here, and then I go into a guillotine. This can be off of somebody shooting a sloppy double leg, and you go into a guillotine. A couple of my favorite setups, though, that show kind of an over and under kind of approach to it are like this. If I get here with Alex and we're kind of pummeling from here, so we got this over under, and we may be pummeling like this here. Once we get to this over under kind of position, I'm going to use my shoulder to pop here into him. I like to practice hitting my shoulder into his chest or his shoulder, but honestly, it's going to be more boom here like this, like a Connor versus Cowboy style, like how he knocked him out. So I'll pop here to make space. And then this hand's gonna slide up from the tricep to the back of the ridge of his skull here, and it's gonna shove here this way. Now, a couple of mechanics right off the bat about this. I'm taking the strip of my pec, where my pec goes into my shoulder or my bicep here, right across the base of his neck here like this. My forearm is coming here and almost kind of hitting his chest. So the back of my hand, wrist here against his chest. This hand here that's gonna assist in the choke is gonna grab at the base of my hand and wrist, right here this way. I like to go all 5 fingers over. I'm not grabbing with a thumb grip here like this, but I'm grabbing right there where the wrist bends. Now, the next thing is going to be my elbow is going to try to touch the middle of his spine over here this way. So I get this nice high elbow guillotine, and I don't push hips forward, shoulders back, or vice versa. I'm pushing hips and shoulders both forward, bending my legs and coming in arch like this, and then pulling my hand up toward my chin this way. So again, we're here like this. I pop with the shoulder back like this. I slide up. I tuck his head inside. I grab the base of my wrist. I throw the shoulder over, the elbow over rather, for the high elbow guillotine. And then I close that space, and my knees stay bent the whole time. I don't crank up like this, like I'm trying to pick him up off the floor. So now, off of that though, like what can happen sometimes is whenever we get to this position, is that maybe his shoulder is too tight against me or something, and instead of going over like this, because it's going to be very hard from standing to finish the guillotine this way. So something that I can do whenever I have this here, if I'm not getting this, I could always pull guard or jump guard in this situation, but that might not be conducive to all environments, obviously. So another option that I have from here is to rip into the inside of his bicep and tricep, and to chin strap him on this side here, and I'm going to kind of shuck him forward, and I'm going to do a pull and snap down. Now I'm going to be polite in training and in demonstration, but this is a really dynamic snap down. So I'm popping down to the floor here to get into base. Once I have him based out here like this, we're going to lead into what we can do as far as guillotines from this kind of position where he's in turtle. Again, I'm trying to keep my shoulder and pec here on the back of his neck. I never want to see his head, because that's when he's going to start popping his head out, which is a common mistake that I make and a common defense that the guy might have. The first one that I want to look at from right here, without changing my position too much, is the 10-finger guillotine. 10-finger guillotine is basically where I'm going to stack my 2 hands like this here, and I'm going to bring those kind of the snuff boxes here to the insides of the carotid. And as I do that, I'm putting my waist, my belly even deeper, and I'm kind of pressing my hips forward as I'm curling the hands into me. And it's a lot of tight pressure directly into the trachea, so it's really nasty. It's coming here like this. I'm pressing forward with my hips and my belly and diaphragm, and I'm curling in so that it's turning my wrist upward, and it's really putting a ton of pressure here on the trachea. But the thing about this, the guillotine sometimes though, and that I think a lot of people miss, at least in the explanation of it, is that it's making compression on the trachea, yeah, so it's extremely dangerous for that reason. And it's a wind choke for that reason, but it's also making that collapse, and it's starting to get in on the blood here too, and that's what we ultimately want. So whenever there's any kind of choke, is going to typically have 3 elements to it. It's going to have air, pain, and blood. Blood chokes are going to be the fastest to put somebody to sleep. There's always going to be a wind constriction though, so a constriction of the trachea, and then there's also going to be a painful element because you're squeezing somebody's neck. We want to make sure that we focus primarily on the blood for the most part, but then we're going to try to constrict the air, and if it's painful, it's painful. It's whatever. People can handle different amounts of pain. So we have so far a couple of, we have a way to standing entry into this kind of snap down that we wound up into. So I have this 10-finger guillotine from here. Now, sometimes though, whenever I'm looking for chokes off of here, maybe I don't have that because maybe his shoulder might be a little bit closer. So this might be a good opportunity for an anaconda choke from here. So an anaconda choke, that's a whole different video. I have a video all about anaconda choke and the Darce choke and everything else. Right now, we're concentrating primarily though on guillotines. So, before we move into that though, I want to see about more of a traditional kind of guillotine to where I'm gonna put, again, the strap on the back of the neck here. I'm gonna grab my wrist, I'm gonna pull in nice and tight like this, and then I'm gonna sit over here on my hip, right? So once I go in, I sit on my hip. Now, I got this detail from Jamie Kilstein just recently, and in fact, I attended one of his seminars. Excellent. If you want to see a good guillotine tutorial, go over to his channel and check out Jamie Kilstein. But anyway, a really good detail that he said is don't go off your hip. What people make the common mistake of a lot of the time is that they start to shoot inside like this here, and then they go to their back and the guy pops his head out. So if instead I stay here on my hip the whole time and I just keep cranking up like this here and stay up, that's the finish right there. So this is basically the position. Whether or not my shin even gets in across his belly here like this is a little inconsequential, because as long as I can stay more on my hip and keep forward, it's gonna have a tighter pressure and it's gonna be high and tight on that guillotine like that. Now, again, like I was mentioning a second ago, whenever we get to this position, if I get all the way through to here, just because his arm is inside next to his neck doesn't mean that I can't still get a modified guillotine. This will be somewhere between a guillotine and an arm triangle. So what I want to look to do from here, I'm pulling this all the way through so my fist winds up by his armpit. I'm grabbing here on my wrist, keeping it nice and tight. I'm going to step this foot way back here, and then this knee is going to curve and then shoot like in here, like I'm going to try to knee him in the ribs this way here. So now, once we get to this side over here, I am on my side a little bit, I'm turning into him, and I'm crunching everything in. So I'm actually pulling in with my legs, I'm punching through with this, and then I'm scooping, cupping, and keeping it nice, tight, and crunched over here on the side like this. I'm not flat on my back so that he can pop his head out. I'm curved off to the side, and I'm pulling his arm across so that I've got a lot of reinforcement into this arm in guillotine. What Alex looks like from underneath like that, if you look, is something like this right here. So all this is being pulled through, and it's gonna be really nasty and tight that way. So that's another really good one here. So another entry that we have from standing, going a little bit out of order, but this is another one that I like that gets us a new opportunity for this, this guillotine. So sometimes we can start from like a collar tie. And if we start from a collar tie here like this, a common collar tie is I'm here on the back of his neck, he's monitoring my arm, I'm monitoring his that's on the back of my neck. So we're kind of mirror image like this. I like, instead of here, I'm gonna try to bring my arm to the inside here like this, so I have this kind of steering wheel control in his bicep. I've got this hand here, and I've got my head inside. I wanna really be annoying with my head, trying to drive it into the back of, or to the side of his face here. So now, a really good one that I can look to do from here is we're kind of moving around here a little bit like this, and I want to kind of push into him here like this, and then I'm gonna try to make him step. Once I make him step, then I'm gonna pop this way. So this is tucking his head down. So the collar tie is pushing his head down. I'm throwing the arm over on this side here, and then I come in, and now I can go back, finish from here this way. So what the guy can do sometimes, and a common response that he might have if he has a technical response to it, is gonna be throwing this arm over. Whenever I feel this happen like this, if I start to crank and try to pull up into it, it's gonna be a lot of pressure, but it's not gonna be enough to make Alex tap from this. It's changing the angle enough that he survives, it's not getting a clean enough choke. So if I see this, then I'm gonna counter the counter. If you wanna see the defense, look at another video. I had a whole defense against the guillotine like this. But if we get to this position here and he throws his arm over, immediately I'm keeping this tight around his neck, but I'm taking the reinforcement arm here and I'm gonna punch it over, so I'm taking it around and touching my thumb to my shoulder. I'm gonna step forward like I'm going toward him over here on this side, and then I'm gonna take a half circle step back to here to take him down to the floor. Now, once we get to the floor here, my arm is still in a pretty good place for the choke itself, but I want to change a couple little things here. One, I'm going to reach up this hand here that was circling. I'm pulling his shoulder down. I'm posting my leg out here, and I'm pulling my guillotine choking arm into him, and I'm turning my chest up toward the ceiling. It's a ton of pressure, not only coming up into his neck and choking and constricting, but pulling on his shoulder and pulling his head the opposite direction, expanding my chest and hips toward the ceiling, it feels like it's gonna pull his head off while it's choking him, so it's all the bad things. So there's lots of different ways this can happen, whether it's like self-defense or sportive or MMA or whatever. I'll show a couple of my favorite self-defense ones. Very basic, very kind of simple things, but they're very effective in the right kind of context with the right kind of energy or the right kind of attack. So one kind of simple one is if Alex is wanting to come in here and just kind of tackle me here, it's this big ugly kind of double leg tackle kind of thing. And the reason I say it's ugly is because he's folded himself at the waist and he's kind of walking in with his arms kind of spread wide. If you shoot a technical double leg, it should be nothing like that. But this is a good reason for you needing to have a technical double leg, because if you have a sloppy tackle like this, your neck is very exposed for this front headlock position or this guillotine. Whenever he comes in, I'm gonna try to block here like this. I'm gonna try to wedge and block here. Now, this may be me stopping him on his shoulders like this, depending on the distance that I gauge, or it may be me going here like this and framing in whenever he comes in, and then blocking on this side. So I'm doing this kind of up-down kind of block here, and I'm kind of sprawling my legs back. Whenever I do that, this hand helps to like tuck the neck inside, and then this one's gonna sweep up this direction here. Then I can either come here and grab here for the guillotine like this on my wrist, tighten it like we did, and I throw my elbow over here to his spine like this, and I walk my shoulders and my hips inside. I finish the guillotine this way. Or depending, if I did catch like this here, it is possible that I just sweep this hand up like this. So I grab the outside of my forearm and then I tuck this one over here. I like this choke a whole lot. It's very fast and it comes in really quick. So I sweep through, I grab my forearm, I put this on the back of his neck, and I walk my hips and shoulders in this way, and it's very tight. It feels like it's gonna pop his head off. Another one that I like for more of a self-defense context is from a headlock. And if Alex goes in for a headlock, I don't want him to break my posture, pull me down, throw me on the floor like this, have the headlock start punching me. So if I'm late and he does get me in a headlock, maybe this is from a sloppy clinch attempt of mine, then I want to make sure that I stay in this T-frame kind of position. My hips are in tight to him and my head is up. Now what I'm doing preliminarily is I'm grabbing here on the wrist and I'm reaching around like this to grab his arm or his lat, whatever I can reach. So if he's trying to pull me down and break my posture, it should be virtually impossible because he's pulling me to the pillar of his support over there. That's why I'm keeping my head up. I may be in danger of some punches, but that's why I'm holding this wrist right here. So if he decides he wants to start punching in a second, I come here and then I gather up the arm like this. But while we're here in this position though, if I can maintain my posture, for me to get out of this, I'm gonna transfer his headlock attempt into my guillotine. So I'm gonna reach across like this. I wanna go under his nose. I like to go under the chin for practice sometimes, but if I go under his nose this way, curve him back this way, once his grip starts to get weak or break, this hand is gonna push his hip away, turn and transfer over, and now he's in position for me to get my guillotine. So I come back here and I set up my guillotine again, high elbow, chest forward, shoulders, hips both walked in, bent legs, and then pulling this nice and high up to my chin, closing the aperture right there. So a place that we can look to get to it from the guard, which the guard is probably the most popular place to finish the guillotine choke from. We can make arguments that it can be finished from every single position just about, but the guard is where you're gonna see the most guillotine finishes across the board: submission grappling, gi, no gi, MMA, whatever. There's good reason for that. Here's a good way to set it up from the guard. And so what I'm gonna do is from here, whether Alex is like posturing up on me like this here, or I'm holding on to him and he goes to posture up, so he gets us up to this kind of 90 degrees posture, I want to prop my hand back and I'm going to go for this hip bump sweep. Now if I'm successful on this, I'll go and I'll turn Alex over like this. I'm on top, I get the mount, and this is great. Now a response that he may have though is whenever I go up to hip bump sweep him, is I go here to hip bump sweep and he tackles back into me, pushes me back to the floor. If I keep my hips close to him, that's what happens. But whenever if I come up and I feel him tackle back into me, and I scoot my butt back like this, I remain vertical, he goes horizontal, so we have this nice pairing of body types here where I can sweep back and then cinch in for the guillotine. Now, rather than going straight back here and falling straight on my back like we talked about before, which is not the most optimal way to finish the guillotine a lot of the time, I'm gonna go just the opposite angle that I was pushing before. I was trying to sweep and push this way, so whenever he tackles into me, I'm running back this way here, sweeping here this direction. I'm gonna come back, and whether I put my arm in front of his shoulder or even under his arm, I'm gonna fall back to the opposite side over here. So you notice that I'm up on my side. I've got a nice high guard with my guillotine. I've got my pec in the right position here. I'm cupped inside. And this hand, even if it's under the arm, I'm curling this way in here, like I'm turning my watch to face me, into his throat and squeezing while I'm pulling in with my legs like that. So this is another really good opportunity to finish that guillotine choke from a failed hip bump sweep from the guard. Another place I really like the guillotine from, because it's kind of a weird, unorthodox kind of option that the guy doesn't see coming a whole lot, is if I start my crucifix here. So I'm looking at turtle position. I'm looking to attack the back here. I've gotten my crucifix set up by sliding my knee inside. I'm gonna scrape his arm back on this side here, pass it to my other leg. I've got the seatbelt here. I'm gonna tuck his arm underneath him, roll over my shoulder like this. So now once we get into this crucifix position here, I've got different things that I can look to try to do. This is kind of hard to get the one arm choke like this. So a little bit unconventional way of looking at it here. I'm gonna reach my arm across like this to Alex. I'm gonna allow his arm, I'm gonna open that so his arm gets to come up so he reaches here. Now, why is he gonna reach there? Because I was just pushing his arm down like this, so whenever he frees it, he feels like, oh, it's free. He's gonna come up and start grabbing at my arm or something like that. So I'm gonna reach and hold his tricep or his deltoid like this here. Now, at that point here, I'm gonna curl up. I'm gonna hook my leg inside here like this, and I'm gonna sit up in this direction. So we come up into the seated position. So I have his back, but it's kind of weird because he doesn't know exactly which way he's gonna need to turn to get out of this position. Oftentimes he can turn one way or the other and wind up tightening up the choke. The first way I'm gonna look to finish this choke here is that I'm just gonna keep his arm inside like I had it, punch through, and I'm gonna grab on the outside of his shoulder. I'm gonna drive my knee inside, and then I'm gonna do this kind of like big muscled up guillotine here, but it's getting his arm and his neck here, so it's an arm in guillotine. If I don't feel like that's quite happening for me, or maybe he feels this coming, he starts to try to pull his arm out, well, that just makes it even better for me, because now I have the straight on guillotine, the arm's not in the way any longer, and then I go back to this high elbow guillotine and finish it from seated here, or even drive down to the mount, which is gonna be really nasty because it's gonna be a lot of forward pressure while I have the guillotine already tight and intact. I like sometimes to do an honorable mention at the end, and this is gonna be my honorable mention from here because it's not really a guillotine, but it's not really not a guillotine. And what we're talking about is the dragon sleeper hold, AKA the executioner. And this is a horribly nasty, dangerous, deadly choke, and it's really cool. So whenever we get here, this happens off of north-south position. So sometimes we'll get to this position, I'm looking to set up my north-south choke. My north-south choke is gonna be like a belly down choke where I'm wrapping underneath Alex's head here, my biceps going across, and I wanna get the tab just right here like this. But what can happen sometimes is he's giving me some trouble with his arms, getting his arms in and out of here like this. So when he gets his arm free, sometimes if he's gonna go to turn up on his side, here like this, then I'm gonna start sliding around this way. So I'll go 1, I slide in, I go 2, I step over here like this. Now, once that happens, I'm gonna pick up and I'm gonna drop to my opposite side here. So I have a connection just like a guillotine, but you see the horrible difference here is that his neck is the wrong direction, which puts a ton of braking pressure on his neck, but it's also a good compression. So I'm gonna come up. I wanna try, if I can, to get my legs over. This would be great if I can get this, and then squeeze and arch at the same time. And it makes a lot of torque, a lot of wrenching, a lot of crank, and as well as the choke. So looks like a guillotine, but it's upside down backwards, and it's really evil. So be very careful, of course, when you train any of these, but especially that last one. It can be really nasty, especially if you like throw it on too fast or anything. All right, guys, so I hope that you like these. I hope that maybe you get some details out of it. Maybe you saw something you haven't ever seen before, or maybe you just saw how to tweak something you're alregi doing. Anyway, like I said, the guillotine may be one of the most versatile chokes in all of jiu-jitsu, one of the most helpful, useful things. You can do it from so many different contexts. Gi, no gi, self-defense, sport, MMA, whatever is the case, it has a lot of different ways that we can get into it, a lot of different ways that we can finish it. So anyway, let me know what you think about some of these ones that we used here, and then also if you've got some interesting ways that you like to enter into the guillotine, or you like to transition into or out of the guillotine to set up some different moves, let me know about it in the comments, because I always like to know what I missed that I can put in future videos, or that I can learn myself so that I can help me out in my own practice and my own game. So anyway, thank you guys again for watching. Keep watching, like, subscribe, share, all that stuff, and I appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot.